Okay, good morning class. Shirki here. I am going to take English grammar, essays, composition, and we are going to have a comprehension. Now your comprehension and essay is going to be of three different kinds. Your essay is going to be for, you've got descriptive, narrative and imaginary. I am going to take right now imaginary essays. So here in this you've got to use your imagination and you'll be given a topic, and based on that topic you have to elaborate and use your imagination. You've got to give me around 250 to 300 words. This is for the 8th standard in ICSE, 8th ICSE. You've got to give me around 250 to 300 words. So we shall start with imaginative essays, and I know you all are very great at using your imagination. So please do so and put in all your imaginative powers that you have in you, and you can write this essay. One more thing I want to tell you, that you have to make a book, and that's going to be your assignment book. Any lessons that I conduct, you have to finish your assignment in those lessons, of those lessons, and based on those lessons I will be giving you marks when we meet. So your assignment basically is like your test. Once you have been given the assignment, you will write the answers and whatever we have asked of you in the assignment, you will write it in a book and keep that book with you. When school reopens, we shall check each book with the assignments given. And if you have not written your assignment or completed your assignment, you shall not be marked as usual. And with me, you know what I do. So don't ask no questions. And please see that you have a book. You have to have a book for English literature, grammar, history, and geography. So you have to have a book for these subjects. So first I am going to start with English grammar, and then I will move on to the grammar part. That means Dinah ma'am will take your grammar. She will teach you grammar. I am going to elaborate on the essays that I am going to take, and also on your comprehension. For comprehension, you should remember that I will not accept anybody copying direct sentences from the passage. In comprehension, you have to use your own words. You can take words from the passage, make your own sentences. Do not take sentences, complete sentences from the passage. You will not get marks. In comprehension, I have asked you to give me a grid. Your grid is going to be there. If you do not make a grid and write the comprehension passage, you will not get marks. So these marks are going to be helpful to you. Whatever assignment we are giving you, these marks will be helpful for you in your first term and in your second term. So please be careful and do accordingly. Each answer, after you have answered, keep a line or two, so that any remarks that has to be written by the teacher, it can be written in those 2 lines that you have left spare. So let's start with the first one. The first one is taking today. It's English grammar, and your title is imaginative essays. So in imaginative essays, I've given you 3 essays. You've got 3 essays. I want you to write on all 3 essays. How you write it, when you write it, but I want you to write it. You've got a lot of time. You can sit down and write it. You've got 3 essays I've given you. So your first essay is, imagine if you were bestowed with wings for a day. What would you do? So your essay is, imagine if you were bestowed with wings for a day, what would you do? Now this is, you have to have 3 paragraphs as usual. You all know, I have done this with you all before. You have to have an introductory paragraph, the body, and then your conclusion. So let's start with the introductory. Now in your introductory, you have to just imagine. So you can always start by imagining that you were sleeping, and in your dreams you imagined that a fairy came down. A fairy came down and woke you up in your sleep, and told you that God has been very happy with you and has bestowed you with the gift of wings for a day, and He wants you to do your best and see what you can achieve when you get wings, and how you can live and what you would do for a day. So in other words, you've got to roll around the dream. You have to mention everything that you want in the first paragraph about the dream. So you have to start in such a way that all of a sudden I saw a bright light, and then I saw it creeping in through the window, and then I saw an image coming through my window, and this image was huge and all dressed in white, and I was a little flustered, and I said I got scared, and with all this I still tried to show that I wasn't frightened. And then I heard a voice, a very calm, soothing voice, and this voice was telling me that God has sent them down to bestow me with a gift. And then you continue about, you can keep on talking about what kind of conversation you had with that fairy, and what that fairy told you, and what you wanted to do. So that's all what you will do in the first paragraph. In your second paragraph, you've got to get into the introduction. So into the introduction, you get up in after your introduction, you have to link it to the introduction. So then you start, when the fairy left, I woke up with a start, and having woken up, it was early dawn. It was dawn, and there was still, the sun hadn't come up, and I looked out of the window, and when I went to bend over out of the window, I felt that I could not do it, and I really looked back, and I saw that I did have wings, and I was shocked. I thought I was dreaming, but I wasn't dreaming. And so I did have wings, and I just wondered what I was going to do. So then I started practicing on how to flap my wings and how to move them, being a first timer. So you have to get involved in this and start off, and then you have to think. And I was wondering, while I was flapping and trying to flap my wings and trying to get into the motion of flying, I was thinking of what I would do. So there are a couple of things I would have loved to do. The first thing is that what I would have loved to do is to go out and see the world, to have a beautiful aerial view of the world out there, and I could just go on and on. There are some things that I would like to do as a human being, and what are those things that I would like to do as a human being, basically. So you can start narrating this way, and then you start. I climbed up I got out of my room quietly, I went up onto the terrace and stood on the parapet, and I started flapping my wings, and I said to myself, it's now or never. Either it is a question of do or die. So I just held my breath, and I flapped my wings, and I took off. And when I took off, I realized that I was flying, and I flew high, 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 and I could see all the pretty houses and all the turrets, and you can just go on explaining. Use your imagination. It's an imaginative essay. So you use your imagination, go on explaining, on the way. So you can say, you can explain everything about the nature, the mountains, the hills, the houses, the tiny people, the vehicles, everything you can this thing. Then you can imagine, then you can narrate about the other birds that you saw and made friends with when you took a rest on a high above in a tree, and you met a whole lot of different kind of birds, and you started speaking in their bird language, and you realized what kind of a plight they have, how they have to hunt, search for their food. They fly for miles and miles, and what difficulties they face, and then when they do get, sometimes the humans and other animals chase them away. So this is all that you have to keep narrating, and then you say that this is all that you saw, but you have to come to one proper conclusion, and that is, what good can you do when God has bestowed the wings on you? What is the good that you can do? So having being a bird, you don't have that much of energy, but you can always do some good. So think of a good thing that while being a bird, what good thing can you do? You can think of a good thing of what you can do. Now you have to add something good in it. You just cannot have something that you can, okay, we've done with scenery, we've done with, you've done with the animals and what your deeds with the animals. So now you come to a good part. You have to be a good Samaritan. So what good are you going to do? Think of it and imagine what good can you do. So you can take, you had a lesson where this rich prince, he turns into gold, and he's studied with statues. He's made into a statue. He dies, and so they put up a statue of him in the middle of the city. And he has his whole statue is studded with diamonds and rubies and emeralds, and he's standing in the middle of the city on a pulpit. They've raised him high up, and the thing is that he was living in the palace when he was young. He never had any. He had never known what the problems were out there. He lived in luxury, so he did not witness anything that was there out in the world. Once his statue was up, and he looked and he saw what people were going through, how sad it was, how the way people were living, and tears were rolling down his eyes. So a little bird like you flew and took refuge near his foot, because you were tired of flying, and then you hit up a conversation with the statue, saying, the statue talks and says, see, there is so much of sadness, and I am a statue now, I can't do anything, I would like to help the people. So he says, see, look into that window, you can see that there is a little boy who is burning with fever, and the lady is a seamstress, and she can't feed her child because she has no money. So he says, can you do me a favor, can you take this emerald from my sword, fly there and give it to this poor lady, so she can buy food and take her child to the hospital. So in this way you can say that being a bird and having wings, what good you have done. Okay, so that is one kind of an episode you can write about. Like, now don't copy what I have said, use your imagination. Use your imagination. You can use your imagination that you have done good as a human being when there is a herd of animals and they are roaming in the dense forest, and they're all searching in vain for water, and they're moving all in the wrong direction. So what good deed you do? You do a good deed by going and telling it into the elephant's ear that you're going the wrong direction. You can move and go into the other way, and you will come across a pool of water and quench your thirst. So there are many little things like this way which you can think of. I can think of many. You can think of at least one or two good deeds and add it to your essay. Then after you do a good deed for others, You feel that I have been bestowed with wings. Why can't I do something good for myself? Why can't I do something good for myself? So first you think of you look at nature, you think of the birds and the animals, you rescue them, you do good deeds, and the last thing is you feel that I won't have this opportunity. I won't have this opportunity, you know, of having wings again. So the only thing that I can do now is something for myself. And what can I do? So, oh, I always wanted to go to Paris to see the Eiffel Tower, but my parents didn't have that much of money and I cannot afford it. So this was my best opportunity because I wouldn't have to have a visa, I wouldn't have to have any cash, I could just fly there and go and visit it and fly back. So that's something good that you've done for yourself. So you can even start off by narrating that you have been there and you're flying, and you can remember that you've flown over the continent and you're flying across the Atlantic and you go into Paris, and then you go and you sit on the Eiffel Tower, you see people, you see everything, and it's a beautiful sight, and then you fly back. Okay, so this flight it takes you in a day, but since now you can't fly in one day to Paris, so you've got to narrate that you're living in a small town close to Paris. Don't forget that. In your beginning of your essay, you have to be imaginative, but you can't go over the board. So you have to think that in the beginning, if you want your last thing to be that you want to go to Paris, you've got to be living somewhere close. Like you've got to be living in New York, where you can go from New York to Paris in a day. It hardly takes you time to fly. And then you have to be like a big bird. You know, not a small bird. You've got to be like a big bird, an albatross or a big huge eagle, you know, or something like a big, even like a vulture. So you've got to be a big bird, so where you can flap your wings and you can catch a thermal. You know what is thermal? Thermals are the heat waves that are in the sky and the wind waves that are in the sky. Birds normally, they catch a thermal, and with that they fly and they move on and they get speed. So you can do that, and that is how you can proceed to Paris and back again. And then you come down, and that you can describe your tryst with Paris and what you did there and all that, and then you come down and then you say, I started taking my homeward journey because it was getting into twilight. We were moving into twilight, and so it had turned and it was time for me to head home. It was twilight, so you can start the ending paragraph that it was evening and it was dusk, it was twilight, and it was time for you to head back home, because as God had said that He was giving you the wings only for one day. You did not want to be stranded somewhere out in the open. So you hurried and flew back home, and you just managed to reach home, and you just managed to reach home, and you creeped into your room, and you were just lying down and taking a breather because you were tired of the long flight back. And suddenly a big bucket of suddenly you feel cold water on you, and you get up with a start, and you see, when you get up with a start, you realize that your mother says, get up, it's time to go to school, you're getting late. And since she had been yelling and yelling, so she douses you with water, and you get up with a start, and then you realized, oh my God, that was an awesome dream I had, and it was just fantastic, and where all you roamed, what all you did. So this was your imaginative one. The second one is if there were no newspapers. So you can now link the same way you can write about this. If there were no newspapers, if there were no newspapers, well, now you've got your Androids, you've got your phones, you get your media on the phone, you get all media you get on the phone, you get your daily news on the phone. So you have to just imagine that if there were no newspapers, you can start by going to the ancient times. like to your grandfather's time, when they waited for the papers to come, and the first thing they used to walk around in the morning outside the house waiting for the paper boy to throw the paper, and then there used to be a ruckus in the house. Everyone wants to fight for the papers because each one wants to read the paper, and everyone wants to relax and go to the, and mainly people wanted to early morning read the paper with a cup of tea. So and then you can also mention in the next paragraph that it used to be a kind of a fight in your house all along, over the years, over the generation. It used to be a fight. First it used to be grandfather and grandmother who used to fight. Then when father grew up, it used to be father and grandfather and my grandmother. And then my mom too used to butt in between. So everybody was fighting for pieces of, for the newspaper, and then one we would share, and we would get the newspaper, and then you can elaborate on that, you know, and then you can even say that I used to keep wondering to myself, what's so funny, what's so interesting in the newspaper? The newspaper is just absolutely nothing. And then one day when I got down to it and I just opened it and I just said, let me glance through it, and I was a bit I was in a bit awe, because I realized that glancing through it I got to know a lot of different news. I got to know the news about the market, the situation, the the current food price, the different things that are taking place, and so you can narrate each item that is there, that is happening and that you've gone through in the newspaper. Then you can write about the, you can write, of course, please don't go into it. I know you people, you love to write about Bollywood and Hollywood. You write anything about Bollywood and Hollywood and I will give you 0 marks. So, but you can just mention about Bollywood and Hollywood, but don't get into the details that you saw pictures of Rajesh, of you know, all your heroes and heroines. Don't get into that details. So you can write about the Bollywood, or you can write about the section where you have a lot of, you know, you have your crossword, you have your bullseye, you have Sudoku, where you can do those kind of things, and your children's corner where you can read about the little tree. The little tree gives you lovely information. So you can read about all that and do all that and all that, and then you can say slowly we started, and then you can go very gently, you can go into the environment. Now you go into the environment because you can say that because people, because of deforestation and environment, we are losing out on the environment, and so we are trying to save the environment, and we are not cutting down trees. And since paper is needed, trees are needed to make paper, so people have started realizing the value of the trees, and they've stopped using paper as much. And so we've been coming into the 21st century, where there is an inventions of iPads and your Androids and all that. Slowly the paper has been disappearing. It's also to a disadvantage. So you can write about the disadvantages of the newspaper disappearing and the advantages. So you can write about the different kinds of newspapers. You know, you used to have the Hindustan Times, the stock market, and you have the Indian Express, the Times of India, the Maharashtra Herald. You can name all the different papers, the Lok Satta, Lokmanya, whatever it is, all the different papers, and so you get a variety to read different people's opinions. While but on the Android and then the phone, you cannot do so. So this is how you write about if there were no newspapers. You have to imagine what would happen, and then you could even say that if there was no newspapers, it wouldn't be. I wouldn't have to undergo World War III every day in the morning. You can end it. That's my conclusion, not yours. You can end it by saying that if there were no newspapers, you would have a pleasant morning. You wouldn't have to undergo World War III, because the World War III starts all with a newspaper at home. And so that would prevent a World War III, because everybody would have their own phones and everybody could enjoy a cup of tea and sit at the table, dining table, have a good conversation over the current topics and enjoy their tea, and yet read the newspaper and enjoy their current topics. So this is about that. If trees could, the next one is, if trees could talk, what sort of things would they have to say? So, this is also the same way you start off with the environment. You can start off with you living in a place where there is a lot of trees and where you've got a forest behind your house, and which the path behind at the back of your house leads into the forest, and you're staying at a hill station. You can start off like that way. You can also remember, think of a scene. Many of you have seen I don't know if you all have seen Lord of the Rings. If any of you all people have seen Lord of the Rings, you see there are talking trees in that. That will give you an idea. If you have seen Lord of the Rings, that will give you an idea of what trees can do and how trees can work, and how, so trees united, they get together, they fight a war in Lord of the Rings. In Lord of the Rings, the trees fight a war. So you can think of that. You could think of the trees when you can even have trees where trees growing. You have a friend who is another tree growing in your neighbor's compound, and you've always been talking to them, and you feel sad because the neighbor doesn't bother, he doesn't put pesticide, and you feel sad while you are blooming and you have a lot of fruit on you growing, and everybody comes to admire you, and the birds and the bees and even the butterflies and all that, and you feel that you are doing something good to humanity, for the humans, and you appreciate it, and you love your owner. While you see around you, you can describe the different trees around you that you see that are in such a bad state that you feel sorry for, and you can say that, when looking at them, a tear or two rolls down your eyes. So this is all you have to write. Use your imagination and write it. So that is that. I've given you a gist of how to do your essays. 3 paragraphs, use your imagination, write as much as you can, and just do the right thing is to start in the beginning. So there is a very nice thing when you start, you have to start at the very beginning. It's a very good place to start. So you start at the very beginning. So the beginning can be a bit of the past, it can be a bit of the future, or it can be the present when you start. So you've got 3, you can do it. And then you go into the basic paragraph, your main paragraph. Your main paragraph is what you have to evolve with, and you have to give all your do's and your don'ts, and what you want to do, what you don't want to do, what one should do, and how they should do it, and what did you gain and what was the loss. So all these things you have to write in the main body. And then you can write your conclusion in just a few lines by giving it a little twist, like what you would do, how you concluded it, okay, and how it was done. You can even write, don't go into a biographic type of ending, that I was very sad and they cut me down and they threw me into this thing. No, don't go in imaginative, don't kill yourself. In imaginative, you don't kill yourself, you imagine yourself, and then you grow more by, that when you have flowers and when you're blooming, your flowers fall and the pollen of your flowers fall, and besides you, other little saplings have grown from your own kind, from you, and you have evolved, and you are helping people and you're helping the environment. Don't kill yourself by cutting yourself down and saying that, oh, I died and they came and they cut me down because I turned old and I was of no use, and they cut me down and they used me for fuel. So don't do that. In imagination, you don't kill yourself. You try to do good and you end yourself with a happy note. Comprehension, I have given you a comprehension. It's here, and it's it's a very small passage. It's by Ernest Hemingway. And I will, if you want, I think I should read it out to you. I'll read it out to you and explain it a bit, because there's a little confusion over here, so you have to be a bit careful in it. So my comprehension is that I'm reading this comprehension to you, so please pay attention. Gulf Stream. He had gone 84 days without a fish. On the first 40 days, a boy had been with him. So But after 40 days, without a fish, the boy's parents had told him that the old man was now definitely and finally sallow, which is the worst form of unlucky.